Well, I'm sure you've heard the expression. It all starts at the top with the boss man or the boss lady. We're here with David Holdeman, and David's one of the co-owners of CSRA Tab, the alternative board. How are you today, David?
I'm just fantastic, Neil. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Great to have you with. And I should, as a full disclaimer, mention that I'm a member of TAB. And I remember when your partner, Darren Myers, and I got started, the first thing he wanted to talk to me about was not my P&Ls, not who I hired or who I fired, but he wanted to know what my personal vision was. Why is that such an important jumping off point?
Well, you've probably heard us talk a lot about company culture and, all of those types of things, why people leave organizations. But the reality is you can't take an organization beyond yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think that with all the chaos going on when you're starting a business, let's face it, it can be a little chaotic. We tend to not back up to the real reasons or the real whys or why we're really what's driving us. So it's very important that as an individual, as the company owner, as the leader of your organization, that you know where you're going. I mean, so the reason Darren asked you that and the reason it's so important is what's your personal vision?
Yeah.
How does this organization serve you?
Sure.
And because if you back up into that and you figure that out, you're going to automatically translate into less chaos.
Yeah.
And let's face it, your company has culture, whether you've defined or stated that culture as a result of just who you are. And that's people they don't think about it that way sometimes.
For me, it's family. I have a young child. She'll be almost 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And so life tends to revolve around that. And at least I try to empathize and understand with team members that have children. So I hope we're speaking the same language. Is that part of the personal vision?
Well, yeah. I mean, how does going back, let's look, for example, what do you want from this organization and how does it help you and your family? I mean, if you have, what do you want to be remembered for? An exercise that I did years ago when I was working on this with a business that I owned, learning some of the things that we're talking about here today. I had a coach and they asked me to write my own obituary.
Oh dear, that sounds a little morbid. Was that difficult?
It's a very eye-opening experience because you really start to look back at what do I want to be remembered for and how. You ask yourself the question, is what I'm doing today serving what I want to be remembered for? But if you start with that, it's amazing how many other things link into place. I mean, we've talked a lot about, Darren talked a lot yesterday about culture and different things. And
at the Augusta Business Daily Conference and Expo. Correct. Back in late May. Yeah.
Yes. And so what I think the thing to remember is that we have a culture in our organization, whether we have it stated or not, and just start pulling the reins, just start realizing that, and then start taking a conscious effort to direct that culture. But it really starts with the business leaders, with the owners, with their personal vision. I mean, let's face it, you own the business, you get to direct that, it gets to serve what that is. And here's the thing about, we were talking about employees leaving and why they leave and the transient nature of employees these days, it appears. But
I've heard studies say that it's not the amount of money that they make or what have you. It really is whether they connect with the boss.
You're right. And I haven't done one of these recently, but I did a survey a couple years back, and I don't think it's changed much, to be honest. And we could figure that out. Is that when you ask employees, why they leave, right? Or what's important to them in a company, money tends to be around 3 or 4. Interestingly enough, I used to use it as a gauge. I mean, if an employee was asking for more money, there's obviously some things to this that's not true. I mean, assuming you're paying a fair, even above wage, above, market rate, it's typically not about the money. It's going to be about other things. If they're asking for money, okay, what's really going on? What are they unhappy about?
Mm-hmm.
That's really what you should dig into. And so, employees tend to leave. It's the appearance is that it's about the money, but the reality is, as you stated, money is not top of the list. And if it is top of the list, it really is something else. It just appears to be about the money.
We're continuing with Dave Holdeman, Coach Dave of TAB. That stands for the Alternative Board, which is a peer-to-peer advisory board made up of local businesses that don't compete with one another, but just try to help each other through issues and opportunities. And there's a local website at tabcsra.com. If you had a prospective TAB member here and you were asking them about their personal vision, how would you say that would impact their team members? Like, how could they make a difference? Like, how much should they share? Like, hey, I have children and it's family first, or I believe in we just go at it 12 hours a day till we're done. Like,
right.
How do you share the vision?
Are you talking about from how does the business owner share? How do you help your employees?
Yeah.
Well, I think what I was speaking to, you could share. I think that would be up to the individual. However, you knowing that is what's important to the organization, whether or not you share how much of that in the organization, although you could. You can get very altruistic about it. My vision is to make a difference. Well, what does that mean? And back up into that. And, maybe you have, businesses are about making money, but why do you want to make money? As an individual in your organization, what do you want to do with that money? Do you just want more time off? What is it matters to you, but what matters to the organization is now, if you have that, you become more, you just solidifies everything for you. And by its nature, there's less chaos. If there's less chaos in you, and if you know where you're going, instinctively, people know that when they meet you, whether you articulate that to your staff or not. The second part of that is helping. We don't talk about this a lot, and there's some business owners think that they need to have these hard lines between business and personal. The reality is we spend more time at work a lot of times or with those people than we do sometimes with certain family members.
You've heard the expression work wife?
Yeah.
At home, it's happy wife, happy life, but then sometimes there's a work wife.
Very true, very true. So helping, an exercise I used to do, I used to find out why my employees work for me. What purpose did it serve? For example, I had a sales manager years ago that I knew he was super passionate about golf. Every spare moment he played golf, and in our weekly meetings that I used to have, with that individual, we talked about that. So how's your golf game? Where's it going? And when we talked about how we earn more money in the business or how we could help him get somewhere, it was about linking that back to how he could play more golf. And I wouldn't have known that if I didn't know what he wanted as a result of this job.
Wow.
And the more that you help someone, because let's face it, employees aren't there. They're not there for your vision. Now let's talk about that a bit though. They want to be involved with a company that's going somewhere. They don't want chaos. We've talked a lot about chaos, and that's where a lot of places are. But everyone also wants to have purpose in their job and beyond how it serves their purpose. If they believe in where your company is going and what's it serving, and maybe you give a percentage of your profits every year to a certain charity, whether they agree with, that particular charity, they get so much from that alignment. They even today, employees want to say they want to be proud of where they work.
Right.
So how do you create that? That is the question. Because if you define that, going back to the beginning, you define your personal vision, then you can define the company vision. That's, in that order. And then the more you put that out, the more people will be proud to say, I work for XYZ Corporation.
You use the word proud, and I do think it comes down to taking pride in your work.
Right.
I know in our basis with Augusta Business Daily, it's important that everyone feels a part of that. We're trying to move things along in a positive way,
right.
Sharing what's going on.
Right.
That's kind of our culture without it being stated, to your point.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
So I get that. I really do. And it's just kind of the organic way, I guess, that you lead.
Right. And I've heard you say a couple of times about, how you want to inform business owners. You want to be, there's a lot of things beyond news that, I know this isn't all about you, but
sure.
that you want to, and people identify with that. And you can take that same idea into your organization. And it's really about creating the opposite of why people or employees leave. I mean, why do they leave? They leave because of chaos. They leave because of lack of direction. And we hear a lot. I want to talk about something for a second too. Is about, we always want to blame something else. And today the classic blaming is everybody wants to go, oh, millennials this, or this generation that, or just generation. It's not. I really don't. I don't buy into that, because if it's just a convenient excuse. If today, yes, a younger person may be ready, or they may move quicker. I think, let's take the older generations. If you didn't have all the things we're talking about today, if there was some chaos, they would just deal with it. Say, you know what, this is my job, and they more. Today's workers are more about, if that's not there, they're going to move on. So, but what you need to do as a company really hasn't changed. I mean, companies have been talking about company culture for forever, right? Mm-hmm. It's just now being demanded from employers, right? That's the difference. It's not, and so if you're not hiring, I always say, look internally. It's not about, yes, you're incompetent. I just thought of something that I want to share. We've all heard the bear story, right?
No, go ahead.
Well, okay. So, two young men are going through the woods, and they come up on this grizzly bear, and he's just kind of, digging some honey out of the tree, right? Right. And they haven't really noticed the two individuals yet, right? So the one gentleman just calmly gets down and he ties his shoes. And his friend gets all worried and said, why are you tying your shoes? You can't outrun that bear. He said, I don't need to outrun the bear. I just need to outrun you. Right. And then in business, it's really about that. It's not about in business. You come back to that culture. You're inside. You just have to win internally. If you win internally, the bear is so irrelevant, right? Because you will outpace your competition. So,
very well said. I've always said that, never competing against other media companies. It's ourselves on a daily basis to do better.
Exactly.
And better.
Right.
And so, again, Dave's website is tabcsra.com. And you may be wondering if this kind of coaching might be for you. They do have the peer-to-peer advisory boards across the CSRA, and as we're recording this, there are two that have been set up. And sometimes you do something called a taste of tab for people who are business owners or leaders within the companies, and explain who you might invite to a taste of tab and sort of how that goes.
We actually had our first taster board, as you like to call it, and it was a really good success. I mean, which was, you always love it when you have success doing something new that you haven't tried before. We basically, the taste of tab is a sample board where we bring in prospective clients, business owners that may be interested but not sure about, what's this all about? If you've never been on a board, it's hard to explain. And so we felt that an experience of it would be very powerful and very meaningful and it was. And what we were amazed, one of the amazing thing was how quickly it gelled and how there were several people there that brought a challenge in their business or something they were facing. And it was amazing how quickly I think everyone that brought something left with actionable things that they could implement immediately in their business. And that's really what TAB is about. We either address opportunities or concerns around a board. And I've heard Darren say it a million times, but I'll say it again. There's something about having 150 to 200 years or business experience around a table, and no matter how much you might know or I might know, there is no replacement for. We don't know as much. We'll never know as much as the group in that environment. And I think the great thing is that everybody wants to. Not. I shouldn't say everybody. There's business owners that's all about them, but most business owners want to help. We want to give back.
It's a kind of a community type feel, and there's an old expression: 2 heads are better than one. I like to say with TAB, 8 heads are better than one. Do you remember? I mean, without going into specifics, do you remember a couple of those challenges that were brought up? That particular day.
Let me see if I can paraphrase.
Yeah.
Certain things are confidential, as you
of
know.
course.
And
that's part of what TAB is.
We had one of them was about market expansion, and do we pivot into, do we double down on what we're doing, or do we maybe do something a little bit different, right? In our
another location.
And another one was about just some legal problems that they were having. Had a vendor that wasn't paying, and he'd gotten advice to go. I think an attorney had given him advice to the whole board disagreed with. It doesn't mean that you don't have to take the legal option, but as a young business owner, I mean, it was just need to communicate.
Yeah.
And he went out and communicated and solved his problem, and it got paid on a partial payment on that invoice right away.
Nice.
Whereas if, and that really showcases the gamut of what, I think the biggest thing that came out of that board, that taster board, was just how we always say, business problems fall into a certain 6 categories really. And people don't realize that, at the top level, your business isn't that much different than the next business. Yes, your products change. You may be cutting hair. You may be installing electrical, or you may be. But the reality is management, culture, all of the things that make all the difference to you isn't that much different than the next business. And the similarities that came out of that were just eye-opening for the members there.
Outstanding. And we sit here in late May. And for anyone that has interest, you could either go to tabcsra.com or just shoot David a quick email, david@tabcsra.com, and he would set you up on maybe just a coffee or getting together and maybe seeing if it makes sense to be part of this taster board. And I've been part of it, I think, for about 18 months now, actually coming up on almost 2 years, September. And it's really changed the trajectory of our company. And I've made it's almost in a way like for anyone who's been to Leadership Augusta or different committees at the chamber or whatever, there's this bond that, man, we're all in this together because it is kind of similar.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I just to add to that a little bit, there's 2 sides to that coin. We want businesses that want to be there, but it's the flip side of that too. They're interviewing us. It's a 2-sided. It's not, and I wouldn't want to say it's a slow process, but it's a methodical process. We really want to be able to match you with peers that will bring the highest value to your business, that will help you move that forward. In, of course, similar business size, which helps you. Because the reality is that the biggest differences in businesses has to do with size and complexity of the issues that they deal with. Like a person that's just starting out, which would be more what we would call an accelerator board, versus the person that has 10 employees versus 30 employees. Their business issues and problems are different based on that. So there's more difference there, I think, than across industries.
Makes perfect sense.
Right.
And just for the nuts and bolts of it, it's a once a month peer-to-peer advisory board meeting for half a day, and then once a month, an hour or an hour and a half, one-on-one coaching to specifically go through some of those issues and opportunities, and you'd be better for it for your business. And as we started with, your personal vision too will work into that. And it's a pleasure to know you and chat with you about it. And you're a good coach, Coach Dave.
Thank you, Neil. As always, pleasure to be with you.
Yes, sir.